Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a great honor and pleasure to be in this room with leaders and experts from this region. While I was leading the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, as the Secretary General's Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction, I went on many missions to your countries, and I saw with my own eyes and heard from you how much you are putting into your efforts, your energy, and your time into make people safe in your countries. At the outset, therefore, I would like to thank all of you for your hard work, and I would like to thank the organizers and the host of today's event, bringing all of us together. Indeed, we are living in a very precarious world, but because of that, I do believe that every year the understanding of risk amongst us and our determination to not being wrecked by disasters is getting stronger and stronger. And in these endless endeavors, efforts, multi-hazard early warning systems, which is at the core of today's conference, is playing a vital role in keeping us safe and our economies running and our world prosperous. Now, in this respect, I'd like to draw your attention to the initiative of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Early Warning for All. And I was delighted that Mr. Nishi brought up this initiative in his wonderful presentation. This initiative was launched when I was at UNDRR. It's a bold one. It's a bold one because the goal is, as you can see, to cover the world with end-to-end early warning system. And the deadline is actually next year, 2027. When I was at the UN, UNDRR and the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, these two organizations were appointed by the Secretary General to lead this bold initiative. And the important thing is that this initiative is not about replacing what is going on, such as the work by ASEAN countries in this area, or the weather-ready Pacific, and indeed the early warning system monitor, which Mr. Nishi introduced, run by Weather News. It's not about replacing them. It is about leveraging and supporting these initiatives, your works and efforts. And as I have mentioned, the initiative is bold because it's not calling for any kind of early warning system. It has to be end-to-end. And it has to be, importantly, connected to early action. That is why I chose for the title of my lecture today, Early Warning Connected to Early Action. And it has to be connected on the ground, in the most vulnerable places. Now, this requires the marriage of 4 areas of work, which has already been introduced by Mr. Nishi, but let me repeat because this is a very important part of this initiative. The first area is disaster risk knowledge. If you don't know what you're dealing with, you can't make a plan. The second is detection, observation, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting. And third, the dissemination of the warning and communication. And finally, preparedness and response capabilities on the ground. Now, as I mentioned, the fundamental focus of the initiative is to support countries in assessing and further improving the status of their early warning systems across these 4 areas. Each of these areas are led by an organization within the UN system or related to the UN system. And you can see which ones they are in the slide. I hope you know this list of acronyms in the UN system. Of course, UNDRR, WMO, I've already mentioned. ITU is the International Telecommunication Union, and IFRC is the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. But of course, as in any endeavor related to saving lives and livelihoods against risks, it has to be a whole of society approach. In other words, it requires the strong partnership amongst all stakeholders. And I think this was also a very important message of the previous presentation. The stakeholders, governments, the private sector, academia, the civil society, the UN system, and many more stakeholders need to work together to make this bold initiative work. But it is actually not as easy as we say. We always talk about partnership, but when we try to do something in partnership, it requires a lot of energy. So, with an year to go, how are things going, specifically in our region, the Asia-Pacific region? In a nutshell, the Asia-Pacific region has made and continue to make significant progress on all 4 areas. Globally, 2.7 billion people have been preemptively evacuated between the years 2015 and 2023. And more than half of these people have been evacuated in our region, Asia-Pacific. Now, it's very important that we're taking the period 2015 to 2023, starting with the year 2015, because many of you should or may or hopefully know that this was the year when the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which we call the Global Blueprint for Resilience, was adopted unanimously by all UN member states in Sendai, Japan. So I think we can say that Sendai Framework started a trend of making evacuation a stronger priority for many governments. I did visit many evacuation centers and sites, and I also joined many evacuation drills during my time at the UN in this region, including in Bangladesh, in Fiji, and Tonga. And therefore, I have attested firsthand the efforts that you are all making in this area. The efforts which led to this high number of preemptive evacuation is upheld by the achievements that you also see in this slide, which are namely the highest coverage of countries with multi-hazard early warning systems. This is in this region, the highest number of countries with comprehensive capabilities, high disaster risk knowledge in comparison to other regions, and the highest preparedness and response capabilities. Today, in the interest of time, I will not go into the concrete numbers related to these achievements, but if you are interested, and I hope you will be interested, there are excellent annual reports compiled by UNDRR and WMO around the progress in achievement of early warning for all, where you can see concrete numbers around these achievements that I have just mentioned. But of course, if we really want to save lives and livelihoods, of course we can be proud of these achievements, but we do need to focus more on the remaining challenges. And so what are the remaining challenges? That is the question. Here, let us look at the global picture, because as much as Asia Pacific compared to other regions is doing a great job, there still remains challenges even in this region, and these are rather common globally. Now, first and foremost, we need to improve the sense of urgency in a world of increasing risk. And I am sure many of you have heard this call to action and the sense of urgency many times. What does this mean in terms of our theme today, early warning system? In the face of the complexity of risks that surround us, the traditional early warning systems are often fragmented, slow, and limited in their ability to process the growing volume and complexity of data. And too often, warnings come sadly too late, and they fail to reach what we call the last mile, where the most vulnerable population are. Early warning systems are often not treated as end-to-end systems. We know that an early warning system is only as strong as its weakest link. And that's why we need to do a better job in integrating data around hazard, exposure, and vulnerability, which are, as you know, the three elements of disaster risk. But then, even when warnings exist with integrated data, they often do not resonate with people because the warning message is not tailored to the culture or the language of the people who are many times the most vulnerable. And furthermore, even when the warning does reach the people, and even if they can understand what they are warned about, if their capacity of preparedness and response planning is limited, if advocacy and education is not sufficient, and if they do not have a strong community leader who will lead them on the ground to safety, the warnings may not lead to early action saving lives. That is what we mean about improving our sense of urgency. But then we also have the challenge of upgrading our infrastructure and making them resilient, crucially at the time when disasters hit us. Mr. Nishi gave the example of Noto. I also went to Noto. It was last year, and I was rather heartbroken to hear that even now, reconstruction is moving very slowly. And there is a big issue about the infrastructure in that area that was hit by the earthquake. So, of course, the issue of infrastructure that needs to be crucially resilient, especially at the time when disasters hit, is a big question. And we also know that the issue of infrastructure is about the observation networks, in infrastructure around the weather stations and sensors when we are talking about early warning systems. But here I would like to draw your attention to the persistent digital divide as an essential challenge. Perhaps not that much in our country, Japan, and many developed countries, but in many countries, this digital divide and the insufficient infrastructure around it is a big issue. Now, overcoming this divide is indispensable for achieving many things, including, for example, sustainable development, but in no other time than in the time of crisis, in the time of disasters, it does become a question of life or death. And then I have put on the slide the challenge of insufficient notion and action for shared responsibility, which may sound a bit abstract, but in reality, this is at the core for creating an end-to-end system. I'm sure that the experts in this room today attending this conference have heard many times about these challenges, and you feel it in your daily work. And perhaps you may also be feeling some frustration, hearing the same thing over and over again. And perhaps also you may feel that many times you are expected and you are requested to bear the brunt of saving lives and livelihoods in our disaster-prone region alone. But of course, saving lives and livelihoods through early warning and early action is not a mission that should be owned solely by the hydro and met offices or the disaster risk management agencies. The mission has to be owned by all the stakeholders of our societies, and importantly, they should not be working in silos. Now, we are living in a time of a multilateral crisis. I think you have also heard what the UN system is going through, what the multilateral system in general is going through. All the organizations of the UN system are being defunded and cannot operate at the level necessary to support countries and their people in order to achieve the multilateral global goals. There are many dire consequences because of this, and UNDRR is not an exception. And here, reflecting on the time when I was the head of UNDRR, of course there are many things that I should have done differently or I could have done better. But in relation to this issue of bringing together different stakeholders so that as much as possible they do not work in silos, I do feel that we were doing, and UNDR continues to do, quite a good job convening conferences at regional, global levels. Bringing all these stakeholders together was a big mission of ours. And sadly, right now, because of the situation around the multilateralism crisis, UNDRR will try its best, I'm sure, but how much can it keep on doing it is a question. And I do feel that this is something that we do need to pay attention to. Last but not least, let me bring you to the challenge of financing anticipatory action. There is an overall challenge around financing anything when it comes to prevention and preparedness. We put just too much money into response after disasters strike, and we do not put enough financing into prevention and preparedness. In the case of early warning system, if we truly aspire to connect early warning to early action and save more lives and livelihood, financing for anticipatory action must be leveled up. Currently, many international organizations do fund anticipatory action, including IFRC, and also many civil society organizations. However, I do believe that there is a need for more domestic resources to be invested, directed towards anticipatory action, not only to fill the gap of the dwindling funding for multilateralism, but to make this your own national priority, your own national agenda. So the list of challenges is quite daunting, but while AI cannot solve all our problems, AI has significant potential to save lives and livelihoods. Artificial intelligence offers a fundamental shift in how we approach early warning, from reacting to anticipating disasters better. And AI has an ability to harness vast amounts of data and also to process it at an unprecedented speed. Artificial intelligence can enable us to move towards a proactive and predictive model of risk management. And also, by integrating data from various sources, including satellites, weather stations, sensors, mobile networks, and even the social media, AI can detect emerging threats earlier in a comprehensive way and forecast them with greater precision. And of course, speed is everything when it comes to early warning. And artificial intelligence, the systems can operate continuously, 24/7, analyzing data streams in real time. AI can significantly shorten the time between detection and action. For the challenge of reaching people more effectively so that early warnings can lead to early action, and in order to overcome the question about language, about literacy, about culture, AI can play a role in adapting the messages to the local languages, to the literacy levels, and aware of the cultural context so that they are both accessible and actionable. And finally, beyond warning, artificial intelligence can link forecasts to predefined triggers so that governments and organizations can take anticipatory action at the right moment, targeted to the right people. And they can release funding, pre-position supplies, and initiate evacuation before disaster strike. There are many ways that we can leverage the power of AI so that we can see a shift from a culture of response to a new culture of prevention, which is the core ethos of the Sendai framework. Of course, I totally agree with Mr. Nishi that AI is not omnipotent, and we do need to be aware of the issues, the challenges that AI can bring to us. But having said that, I do look forward to learning from today's conference on what is happening on the ground, how it can accelerate, how AI can accelerate the early warning for all initiative and ultimately save lives and livelihoods. Thank you very much.